Today we're going to be talking about substance over style. After several iterations of making this car better, I found that there's one thing that I could change to make it the best car that it can be without compromise, and that is to keep the wheels as they were originally intended to be used, which is having the protrusion part out instead of having it flipped around so that the little holes would be out on the outside. So initially I wanted the inverted wheel look with the wall of holes on the outside, but for whatever reason that didn't clear these wheel wells here on the top. And so what I needed to do was add spacers between the wheel itself and the body, the chassis body. And while adding spacers is not such a bad thing, it kind of is, because it actually decreases the speed of the car. Let me just preface this by saying that I've tried using metal spacers as well as plastic spacers, and all of my Tamiya colleagues have said you should use plastic spacers. However, using plastic spacers, the little white spacers that you find inside Tamiya motors, that's actually not allowed in stock class these days. So there are new rules, stock class, and there is one golden rule that says you are not allowed to use the innards of a motor as parts on your car. That's part of stock class rules under the motor section. After I read that, I was like, I had this sinking feeling that, like my car's not in compliance anymore, so I have to make it in compliance again. And the only way that I could do that with the setup that I have here with the aluminum wheels is to revert them back to how they should be. So instead of having the flat wall of holes, I have to have the wheels like this with the protrusion outside and the wall of holes on the inside. So this is actually the way that they would prefer you to position the wheels, as you see here. Not the way that I had them, where it was like the flat side with the holes on the outside. You could do that if you spaced them out with metal spacers rather than the plastic spacers that you would find inside of a motor. So I had to remove all that, I had to invert this, and then remember what I said before in a previous video, how something happened where I think the motor overheated and the speed of this went from 38 kilometers per hour down to 34 or 35 kilometers per hour. Well, I had the flat side of the wheel out with the spacers there, and I believe that the friction that was caused by the spacers reduced the speed from 38 kilometers per hour to 34, 35 kilometers per hour. And here's how I know that, because when I reverted back to this way, right here, everything fit perfectly without the use of spacers. And I was clocking this on the speed checker, and guess what? It is back to 38 kilometers per hour. So it's back to its super fast self. So yeah, even though, like, this look is growing on me, but even though I'd rather have the flat wall with the holes on the outside, because I like that look, that is not the best way to have these wheels installed on your car if you want like optimum speed. So this is like I think this is like a revelation to me, right? So having all of these, of course, right? So you might think, oh, of course, adding spacers to a car, that's going to slow everything down. That's obvious. But you never know unless you try it. And there are probably ways of having those spacers intact such that you can get faster speeds. But let me just tell you, the philosophy of less is more is always true in Mini 4-wheel drive. So by not having the spacers and just having the wheels properly positioned so that they're not inverted, and having no spacers, like having less is more, that is the secret to getting this at an optimal speed. So yeah, 38 kilometers per hour. And that's the motor. That's the motor and how I broke it in. And so you'll see the method for break-in for my motors in another video that I've already published. And that's exactly how I broke this motor in to get 38 kilometers per hour on this kind of car right here. So yeah, and it's got reinforced shafts, and the front shaft is, let's just say that it's not in the straightest position, right? So as I mentioned to you before, reinforced shafts can be slightly bent on the ends and they'll still work fine. However, you want to try to have your reinforced shafts as straight as possible, but if it's got a little bend on the end, oh well, it's probably not going to affect it much because that little bent end is going to be squashed into the little white gasket right there, or gusset, that is positioned inside the aluminum wheel. So it's going to straighten out anyway. So it's like if the rest of the shaft is straight, it doesn't really matter too much about the end of the shaft. At least that's my experience so far. Now, it could be totally wrong, of course, right? If I had a totally straight shaft to use, maybe this would be 40 kilometers per hour. I don't know. But you know what? 38 is pretty fast. 38 kilometers per hour is pretty fast, and I'm happy with that. So, and you know what? It's not even with my best batteries. Like, I had like 1.53 to 1.54 volt batteries in there, and I know that if I had my 1.58 volt batteries, it would probably be faster than 38 kilometers per hour. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. And yeah, you want to make sure that these little white gussets or gaskets or whatever they're called, these things that stick into the aluminum wheels, you want to make sure that the inside of it is flush against the wheel, right? So when you have the flat side of the wheel inside rather than outside, the stance is wider than if you inverted the wheels. If you inverted the wheels, as you see here, this is kind of recessed. Take a look. It's kind of recessed inward by a little bit. So you need the spacers to keep the stance as it is now, like what you see now. The stance of the wheels in their normal position is like, say, this wide. But if I inverted them, the stance of the wheels would be this wide. And so you would need the spacers to get it back to this wide. So do you really want that trouble and aggravation to do that? That's the big question. So is your concept of style so strong that it has to dominate over substance, over what the performance of the car should be? It shouldn't, right? You should really try to optimize your performance over style. But if it really bugs you, then of course you're going to need to have style over substance. But this is just like an important lesson for me and for others who are like really about style over substance. Like, I really rather have like a nice looking car than a crazy looking car that doesn't make sense to me style wise. But yeah, in this case, it's growing on me. I don't have a big issue right now with it, but before I had a big issue with it, these recessed wheel look kind of thing. So yeah, I'll just keep it like this, 38 kilometers per hour. It's a pretty fast car right now, and I lightened the load a little bit because I discovered that the little side weights that I had little side weights behind these big weights here, and on one side, the weight wouldn't slide all the way down because it was like knocking up against the cowl, the body. And I know that there's probably some rule or regulation that says that I could probably shave off part of the cowl to allow the damper to move up and down. I don't know. Like, I don't want to chance that. So I decided, you know what, I'll remove it because I know that maybe in some racing events they're not going to allow that. And why would I want to sacrifice the versatility of my car for just a single event, right? So you want to try to make your cars usable for many different events, not just a single event. So that's another thing I considered, and that's why I said to myself, I'll just remove these little side weights here. They did add a little bit extra of the kind of dampening effect I wanted, which is sort of like a simulation of how an open class body damper would behave. So that's why you have two sets of mass dampers on each side here. It's a cool thing, right? Is it totally necessary? Like, does this car go fast enough to justify that? Well, yes, it does. Because if this were on the lower end of the 30s, of 30, so let's say it was 33 kilometers per hour, something like that, 30 to 33, it wouldn't need the double set of side dampers. But once you approach that 40 kilometers per hour, I think you need all of the side mass dampers that you can get. And that'll keep the car down in crucial moments on the track. So yeah, that's my theory anyway. Other things that I can detail for you. Oh, the front part here, I decided to put these little plastic pegs on here to prevent the dampers from like having such a high throw. So I'm calling it throw. I'm not sure what exactly the term is, but the throw to me is how far the damper moves. So it's the distance that the damper can move. So if you have a shorter throw, then yeah, it's a lot more controlled. If you have a longer throw, then it will really help over like certain situations like big long jumps. So I think that's the way, right? If it's not, you can comment below and tell me. But yeah, like I've tried to make the throw similar from the front to the rear, but have a little less throw towards the front than towards the middle or the rear. The middle and the rear, I try to keep the throws about the same. The front throw is usually a smidge shorter. So some people decide to make the throws the same on all three, but I don't think that's the way. I think that you should have a shorter throw in the front. That way, when it jumps, then immediately the weights bring it back down quickly so that it can go down hopefully smoothly and then continue on its merry way. So this is a very heavy car, so I don't expect it to like jump very high. And so certain tracks, this might not be the best for it. That's why I have other cars in my arsenal. But this, if you want something that's slow, steady, wins the race kind of thing, I think this might be it. So we'll see. So yeah, everybody, if you like this video, please slam the like button, subscribe to my channel. You'll see more videos just like this one. Until next time, everybody, see you, bye, and happy racing.